The inaugural issue of the New Thinking Aloud magazine was just released on March 1st. You can download a free PDF copy from the New Thinking Aloud Foundation website.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is UFOs and miracles. We'll be looking at the extraordinary life of a North Carolina businessman named Christopher Bledsoe. He is author of UFO of God, and his life has been totally transformed after his first UFO encounter, followed by continuous events involving healings, clouds of fire, personal transformation, and even social transformation. My guest is Christopher Bledsoe, who lives in North Carolina, and now I'll switch over to the internet video. Welcome, Chris. It's a real pleasure to have you on the program. I'm delighted to connect with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishlove. I am honored to be here. I really am.
You've had an unusual experience, but not just a single experience. It's sort of been ongoing continuously. I guess it's been about 16 years now. And not only has it impacted you and your family and your friends, but it's involved researchers in the UFO community and government officials as well. It's really quite an extraordinary story.
Yes, sir. What's really strange is that it's growing exponentially, the interaction. And I never dreamed it would get to where I go out every night and here they come. It's pretty strange, but.
You have sent me some of the videos that you've taken, and I'll share them. I guess this is just a couple of the hundreds of videos that you've made. What I saw looked almost like fireflies, much of the time, tiny little dots of light, but sometimes they flash and become larger, much larger than a firefly could possibly be.
Okay, there's a tree right here, and there's an orb right over top of it. It's moving northeast. I saw it coming, filmed it coming at me, and but it come to speak to me. Thank you. March 15th, 2023. Oh, it's starting to dim out. I'm having to walk left of the tree to keep it in view. Thank you. Yeah, and it's been doing that. I noticed a shift in February. So I've been taking those types of videos, and it's just growing. I don't know why, but yeah, they'll flash you red, flash you white, flash you yellow, and sometimes it'll be really, really big and bright.
Why don't we start at the beginning, Chris? If I understand correctly, it was 2008. Up until that time, you had no interest particularly in the paranormal or UFOs, although I gather you considered yourself a devout religious person.
Right, that's correct, on all fronts. I was too busy raising 4 children and building 100 homes a year, which really had me, everything I could do to manage that. So I really never thought about the paranormal up until that day in 2007.
And it all happened in one amazing day. You were out fishing at the Cape Fear River with your friends, including your son. You experienced missing time, and then from that moment forward, it was like nonstop.
Yeah, it was the craziest thing. I mean, as soon as we got home, it followed me home from the river that night. And then pretty much we never knew when something was going to happen, but right away we'd had these orbs, smaller orbs would flash inside of our house. And then you would see one or two, sometimes two we saw. My wife was walked down the hallway following two shadowy figures that come out of an orb inside the house. But we saw that quite often and still do. It's amazing.
Well, you know, there's a conflict within the UFO community between the nuts and bolts people and the people who say that this is paranormal and it might be other dimensional or spiritual. I'm under the impression that at this point in your life, that although it was very frightening at the beginning, that you consider it primarily a spiritual phenomenon.
Yes, sir. I completely do. And knowing it knows your thoughts. I mean, how do you reconcile with that? It knows where you're going to look before you look and the way you're going to react before you do. And so that force is so powerful. I don't know any other way to look at it than, a spiritual thing. It's not physical by any spacecraft of any means. It's always been light, and these shadowy figures.
It's not as if you've ever seen anything that had landing gears or bolts or a metallic surface.
I have seen those in the daytime, and I've filmed several of them, rotating, glowing, what looks like a disc in the air. I have a lot of photos of little round orbs that looks gray or solid in the sky. But I wonder, is it the same phenomenon able to change its appearance at will, which I think that's what it's doing.
I should mention, for the benefit of our viewers, that I was connected with you through my good friend, John Alexander, who's been interviewed on this channel several times. He's well known as a person who is an expert on the paranormal from within the military, although he's now retired. But you've developed a close friendship with him as well. And the important thing I want our viewers to know is that John attests that while in your presence, he experienced one of the only 2 UFO sightings he's ever had in his life.
Yeah, John is my friend. He's been there for, it was a special thing that we got to experience that together and to see his reaction. It was just, it makes me laugh. It makes me happy that he's my friend. I really think the world of John Alexander. So does all my kids.
Yeah, there are all sorts of rumors circulating around John Alexander. Some people think he's a disinformation specialist involved in unsavory activities. And I don't have any reason to believe any of that. And I've known him well for 20 years. I trust him entirely. And the unique thing that he pointed out is that before, just a few seconds before this UFO appeared right above the 2 of you, you told him it was coming. You felt it.
Yeah. And that's what really got his attention. And I never made anything of it because it was so natural, to sense it and walk out. I feel it from inside, and there it would be. Well, John opened my eyes on that part, and that was within 10 seconds it appeared. I told him, I said, I hear them, I feel them, they're right above us, John. And when I pointed up, it appeared, and it didn't fly over, it just appeared in a big flash, and there's this ball of light, and it just flashed about 5 times and shot off to the south. And John was on the cell phone really quick. It was great.
I also gather, Chris, that John is just one of a number of people, many of whom are from the government, who have made a trip to your home in North Carolina where these phenomena seem to be appearing on a regular basis.
Yes, sir. There have been many witnesses from the government, all the way back from the 2008 when they first started coming. And that's been, I got a reputation in the UFO realm that I was the government's boy or NASA's boy, but really I found the most sense within these government officials would come and, my family was made to be afraid of them to begin with because they're the men in black and all this, but it was quite the opposite, that it was John and Jim and all these folks that have been to my home and have stayed in touch and made the most sense to my children and actually vindicated them with their friends. And so, yeah, that's been probably the best part of this journey, is to have these people around me that understand and really want to get to the bottom of what's going on here. So, but that's a mountain to climb.
Well, it is a mountain to climb. It seems to defy almost any kind of conventional scientific explanation. But I think it's important to point out that many of these government people who have come to visit you are having similar experiences of their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And some are having them since we met. And there are others that had them before we met. And they're truly, trying to find answers like all the rest of us. And, you hear stories the government has all this technology. Well, I'm sure they got a lot of interesting stuff. But from my dealings with them, they don't know much more about it than we know. And they're just trying to find the answers too. So,
well, I think the crucial thing, or let me put it a little differently, one of the central features of your encounters is the healing aspect. As I recall from your story, you suffered for a long time from a serious case of Crohn's disease, which to my knowledge is considered not reversible. Crohn's disease is typically permanent, but in your case, it lifted right after your first encounter.
Yeah, it happened that night. And I didn't realize it, how much it went away to a few days after. But the very next day, I knew it was mighty strange because this medication I was on, I had to take it every day. And if I missed it within 2 hours, my body was so used to it, especially one particular type that restricted my intestinal system. It would cause it to force it to try to digest food. So the very next day, around 10, 11 o'clock, I started panicking. I hadn't had my medicine and noticed that I wasn't feeling sick. And so I just waited. I had that thought that night, that day, that maybe something happened. And sure enough, over the next week, it just completely was not there anymore.
Tell me, isn't it the case that you had some communication with a being, you refer to her as the lady, associated with these orbs and these appearances of large glowing lights of different colors, and she was giving you some instructions so that I suppose really at the end of the day you've become something of a healer yourself.
Well, yeah, that I didn't know what she had when she came. It was 5 years after the river event, and I was really frustrated with how everything had gotten. It was kind of a dark time. My children were being made fun of in school, and they were little, 10 to 17, 4 of them, 15, 13. very tender age to have their whole class laughing at their father, and the teachers call them up to tell the story. Because of a Discovery Channel show, it got all that negative publicity. And so I was ready to quit, and I walked outside and I just shouted to the sky, I'm done. I'm not, I try to get a photo just to share with my friends, just to let them know I'm not lying. And it would show up, but it would never let me get a photo. But she showed up on Easter of 2012, 5 years to the day, 5 years later. And immediately, amazing things started happening, and it turned from a dark place to I was in Washington, D.C. helping this child that his mother wrote me last night. She's so excited. But it was a very prominent family that my whole family has grown to love. They were at wit's end, didn't know where to go. And I guess what's amazing, Jeffrey, is that she being a doctor and her dad a cardiologist, and with all the resources in the world, there was nobody to help that child. So they reached out to some old guy from North Carolina that had a UFO experience to try to help the child. And that floored me, how that came about. But this young boy is in college now. He was 13 with a feeding tube and said he wouldn't make it, but he's coming again this summer to visit. He does pretty much every year or so we get together.
Now, if I understand correctly, there was an intermediary who brought you together, Larry Freschella, I believe is his name, and he's also the person, if I recall correctly, who introduced John Alexander to you.
He sure is. Larry's a good friend, and he's one of those guys that has a connection to everybody. He friends everybody. He's a friendly person, very wealthy. And he just knows how to he knows everybody. And so, he called me, and he knew about this child in D.C. And it said, we need you in Washington like tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow? Are you kidding? This was the 4th of July. Friday was the 4th, and my kids were coming home from college, and I'm like, can it wait to Monday? I didn't even really know the story. He said, what's more important? I'll never forget it. I said, what's more important, a child's health or your vacation? I said, well, you got me there, Larry. Send me a ticket. And so next day I'm in Washington, and he picks me up, and we go down to their house, and I was totally lost, Dr. Mishlove. I had no clue what to do. I was frightened about the whole thing. This is new territory for me. How do I help anyone? I don't know how. And so I just started praying about it. And this voice said, after we were there 2 or 3 hours, it said, just hug him. And I did that. And that started this journey for him that I don't know if it was me that did it. I don't claim it was me. I think it's more like the phenomenon is in control, and maybe I have a little access to it to ask it to do things like that. So,
well, I gather it was Larry Freschella who had the insight that you could be the person to heal this child.
Yeah, he knew, because it was NASA, a friend at NASA that I was working with pretty close for a while there. He came into our life. There was 2 of them, Dr. Hal Povenmire, and then this fellow by the name of Tim Taylor. And I told Tim what happened on an incident with a dog. And that's in the book. That was the first indicator. I had no clue. It was 2 weeks after the lady appeared. I had this black Labrador that for some reason had a big gash across its neck, and there were witnesses there, a lot of people there, and one guy with a camera filming. And nobody understood what happened to her, had no clue how she got this big 2-inch gap across that vein, and blood was going everywhere. And she ran in the back door of my house, bleeding all over the floor, and I picked her up and took her outside, laid her on the patio, and put my hand on her neck and was just holding pressure to stop the bleeding or try. And I just looked up and said, what do we do? And there, everybody's looking at me, and I knew she was going to die. And so I just cried out, Lord, what do we do? What do I do? I don't want my dog to die. And immediately I felt her whole tense, and everything about her being tense and nervous, just she relaxed. And when I picked my hand up, there was no more cut there. And that got the attention of my NASA friend. And he's like, I think somebody's telling you maybe should try to help others. And that's how that came about. And so it wasn't long after that when Larry called about this child.
So it's not as if you have a regular ongoing healing practice.
No, and I don't profess that. Although there's a never-ending shortage of people reaching out that their mother's dying or has cancer, and I just tell them all I'll keep them in thought and prayer. There's no way I could deal with all this, and it wasn't my intention. But if it helps anyone, I'll do what it takes, in my power. Although I have no idea what I'm doing at all.
Now, to get the story straight, there was a 5-year gap between your first encounter and that 5 years was a difficult time for you. Your children were being attacked by their fellow classmates, and you and your family were still, I gather, afraid of all of these lights appearing, sometimes inside your house, often outside the house. The friends with whom you had gone fishing were, I think, also startled, maybe frightened by the things they saw. And you had 4 hours of missing time during that original encounter that, to my understanding, you still haven't really explained or investigated.
Well, I've struggled this whole 16 years to figure out what it was that happened. And I get images of, and these memories, I guess they're memories, but I can't guarantee it. But the overwhelming thing is that I was looking down at Earth from way up high. And that I keep seeing over and over. And it felt like there was someone behind me, just, kind of this guardian presence that was over behind me and showing me this from above. But details, I can't remember details. Whatever they did it good, for sure.
And the other really intriguing aspect of your encounter is that while the Crohn's disease, which is a very serious condition, seemed to evaporate, at the same time you began to contract rheumatoid arthritis.
I did. It was 2 years of, you might say, reprieve. And Dr. Gary Nolan mentioned to me that he thought maybe the Crohn's went into remission and came back as this rheumatoid. Of course, I had it tested at Chapel Hill University, and they didn't see the crossover, although it can happen. That's what they told me. But my rheumatologist believes that might be what happened. But irregardless, yes, I have had a bout with that. I really struggle with it. So, but I'm better right now. At least I feel better. My doctor's telling me, no, you need to go on infusions like next week. And I'm fighting that pretty hard. So
you're feeling better, but the doctors say you're still suffering from rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, she says I have a very aggressive kind that if I don't put it in remission, it could do a lot of other damage. So So, it's a hard decision to go on those kinds of medications, sit in a doctor's chair for an hour every month and have these things in your IVs and all. So, and what it does to you physically and strips you of your energy. And Lord, I don't want to go back that route, but I do what I have to do. So.
Well, so it's very interesting. The Crohn's disease and the rheumatoid arthritis, I guess, would both be considered autoimmune diseases. Right. So if one could kind of convert to the other, it would be a function of your autoimmune system.
That's what Dr. Nolan told me. Yeah, he sure did. He said it's entirely possible you got a reprieve from one and it came back as the other.
Now, Gary Nolan at Stanford University is currently regarded as one of the foremost people within academia who is looking very seriously into UFO phenomenology. He's
a brilliant scientist, and he's into the DNA and the all that.
I gather that since you had your first encounter with the lady, 5 years after your original experience in 2008, so this would be about 2013, 10 years ago now, you've had ongoing experiences with this lady figure.
Well, I haven't seen her other than I've seen her 3 times. But I still know that even though she's not here in person, that what's coming is what was with her when she came the first time. These orbs are attached to her, and I know this. And it's like they're, if I speak to her, here they come. It's really bizarre. But we filmed this, we've studied it, and a lot of people have witnessed it and how it reacts and all. So what does all that mean? I don't know. I feel like an infant, with all this power coming. It's so powerful, and I'm on its radar. You know how when you think about it, that this light, this week I filmed for an hour, one orb, setting one of those yellow ones, yellowish red. It was 30 feet from me. And every time I would turn my camera 7 or 8 times in an hour and say, I have a friend right there, it would appear in the same exact spot for an hour, and did it over and over on 7, 8 different videos. So it never left. It wasn't like something flew over and it's waved at you and it's gone. It's still there. It's standing next to me. So it's taken on a whole new thing.
How large was this particular orb?
It was about big as, of course, they can flash and look different sizes from a little flicker, but the orbs on average are about this big. You see them flying around like upwards of a bowling ball, sometimes smaller. Even those you see flying up high, they can look really bright and make themselves look bigger, but they're not all that big. They're much. Of course, they can be very big. I mean, I've seen them go from this size to a Volkswagen in 1 second, just like that size and bigger.
I have the impression that you consider these orbs to be conscious entities.
Yes, I actually do. They're very much communicating. And I've demonstrated this hundreds of times, how I can ask certain things or say certain things and they'll respond. They come back and answer me. So I've developed a way to ask and get an answer from them. And then they that light, when they flash you with it, it makes you have these dreams. And I'm sure there's information coming through the light, for sure.
So it's as if the orbs themselves are a life form.
I really believe there's some kind of magical, supernatural being. It's the only way I can best describe it. But of course, we had the right people here to figure it out. It might be something entirely different. I don't know, but that's what I'm seeing.
Well, they certainly don't appear to be biological in the same way that we are.
Right. They're not. It's just a ball of light. And I actually have a video of taken at my old house with a young lady that was suffering with lung cancer. She was standing next to me, and her best friend was on my right. I was right between them, and we were out in my back property with a group of folks. And she came from 2 hours to seek help for her cancer scan because she was going in on Monday. Well, anyhow, I had some Native American friends there that stopped by accident. They called me, and it was a great thing because they were at this burning tree that we had at our old house that happened. They were saying their Native American song, and we were all watching them. And suddenly an orb appears about 15 feet out in front of us, chest high, and it came right straight at me, rotating. Got it on film, the whole thing, and it flashed. And when it flashed, out of that orb stepped about a 6.5 or 7 foot tall white figure like a human figure. And instantly, that when the flash went out, now you got this translucent figure standing there, and the orb is inside of it, and it walks out of the screen. But the whole point is, when she went in to get her scan on Monday, all the cancer was gone except one tiny little speck. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of things happen.
What are some of the questions that you ask of the orbs?
I ask them all the time to help others that are sick. And that's an every night chore. I have a whole lot of people that write me letters and emails and texts, so I'm always asking that. And I'll get signs. Sometimes certain people, I'll film the response of the orb and send it to them, and it gives them hope. I don't know if it's hope or what it is that helps some of them. If it's a placebo thing, I don't know. It's just what I do. But I often ask them, to help with like my book. Every night I'd go out and I'd say a prayer and I'd ask for the words. And I'd get up the next morning, and before I got out of bed, I was writing as soon as I woke up. And I did that for months and months, but it's no telling. It's whatever the person is here. Sometimes they'll have questions about their family or certain events, and they want a response. And this could be anything we ask them.
Do you ever ask them where they're from?
I do, but I actually believe they're from here. I think that they're part of this world, and they live around us in the air above us, and we just don't see it. I think the dogs can see it. I pretty much have proof my border collie sees them because he'll alert me. He might be looking one way and I'll hear him barking, and when I turn around, there's an orb that that'll appear a minute later. It's like he sees them when we can't.
And do you ask for more healing for yourself? Are you asking them to help you with the rheumatoid arthritis?
Yes, sir, I am. In fact, in 2019, I was almost permanently in a wheelchair by early 2020. I could not hardly walk. I try on a cane, and I would make it 10 feet, and I'm just excruciating pain. And Jim Semivan, my friend Jim, he called me, he said, you need to pray for yourself. I always felt guilty about it and never would. And so I started praying, and I started getting better. Even though my doctors says your DA score is high, but your other numbers are very high. Your DA score is not that high right now, even though it has been. That's the disease activity score. These other numbers are really high, she says. But regardless, I began to get better and better and was able to use my hands again. For the longest time, I couldn't even use my hands. I mean, couldn't tie my shoes or anything.
Well, it is interesting that you were standing next to a woman who was healed overnight from lung cancer, which is pretty serious, but the rheumatoid arthritis is responding more slowly, but is responding to the healing influence.
Yeah, it has responded, and I'm still praying every night. More now, ever since I went to the doctor last week, and she mentioned, you need to be on infusions. Well, I started praying harder. And I am every day now. I keep it in my thoughts all day long. So we'll see.
You mentioned Jim Semivan, who, as I recall, wrote the foreword to your book, UFO of God, who has also had experiences similar to your own.
He was the director of operations for the Central Intelligence Agency. Yeah, CIA. He was the big guy there. And they even have awards named after him when you walk in the door. That's how high up the ladder Jim is. But yeah, he and his wife Debbie, we love them. Our whole family does. It was Jim that came to my house in 2016. He came for my birthday, and he told my kids to call. It was 2016. To all their friends to the house. Call them all over tonight. I want to have a talk with them. And so they invited all their childhood friends, and they'd all just graduated school, and 3 police officers come pulling up. They were young cadets, and they just got their car, but they were my son's best buddies, and one of them was a cousin. But they all pulled up, and Jim, around a fire on the back patio with all these kids there, he told them like it was. He said, you have no clue who is watching this man he was talking about and his family. So that made a big impact in my children, especially my middle son, and our relationship as a father and son, and because they suffered bad from this.
Well, it seems from what you're saying and all of these contacts that you have with people in the government that the government has shifted. No longer are government figures debunking and ridiculing people such as yourself. They're coming out and saying that I've had experiences like that as well, and we in the government know about these things. We may not know everything, but we understand that this is real.
Absolutely. No, it's real. And yes, they're coming out. And very high level guys are coming out to tell because they think we all should know. But they really don't know what it is much more than you and I do. I mean, it's like John Alexander says, they're communicating, but we need the Rosetta Stone, right? We don't have that.
Well, there are a lot of people who have assumed that phenomena of this sort must be diabolic, that they're not, even if they're spiritual, they're not positive. Are you encountering any of that?
I never have. In the 16 years since January of 2007, it was always I was suffering from sickness and losing everything I had and unable to support my family. And so I'm in that mindset crying out to the heavens, and these big balls of fire came. And that scared me. It really did, and my family. But once the government started coming in 2008, different folks from there, and throughout the whole time, we realized that it wasn't going to eat us, and it was something everybody wanted to learn what it was. And they I stayed away from these UFO conferences and going to those places because some guys from NASA asked me to not. We don't want you tainted by others' experiences. Keep yours to yourself, and we want to study it in its pure form. And so that's how it started with, different government guys, and we made friends, and I've been privileged to know things that way ahead of time others haven't been aware of, and I've been places that I'm honored to have been in mission control and the astronaut crew quarters and all. I can go play on NASA like a big playground and walk through their machines, and they welcome, me with open arms, and been into some amazing gatherings in Washington, D.C., like Brandon's bar mitzvah. That was the greatest thing. I had never been to one, and that was the highlight of my life, I guess, to be there and experience all these beautiful people dancing and having fun. And it's just so close to camaraderie. It's been a blessing. This whole thing has turned out that way. It wasn't always a blessing, but it's turned that way.
Well, you keep referring to love, how close your family is to the families of the people who you've encountered in the government, who you're working with. It's very rare to hear the word love used in conjunction with relationships with government officials.
Yeah, and believe it or not, my Dr. Hal Pavenmeyer, he was the first guy at our house in 2008. He came in June. And for 11 years, he died in 2020. And he was coming to our house for Thanksgiving, he and his wife, Katie. But he fell. He was 80 years old, and he fell and went in a coma and never woke up. But that man came, and he told us, I come to debunk you. We didn't know that for the first 2 or 3 years. I was terrified of him and all the rumors. But he turned in to be the greatest thing. My kids loved him. He would bring big bags of, all kinds of artifacts, from tektites to a tiger, saber-toothed tiger tooth, or a woolly mammoth tooth. And all my children, when they knew Hal was coming, they'd invite all their friends from elementary school, and he'd sit around. He couldn't visit me, but he was in the kitchen with all the kids the whole time. So he made all of them's birthdays. He made my daughter's college graduations, her piano recitals. He would come 13 hours from Florida to do that. That's been my experience with the government. It's totally opposite of what people would think.
Yeah, many people have nothing but negative things to say about the government. So I find it very interesting that you have such an open heart and they respond to it.
Yes, sir. They sure do. And, if it wasn't for them, some of these guys, I may not have as tight a family as I have today, because they brought about a bunch of healing towards us as a family group. It really made my individual family, because we were being ostracized, come closer together and feel like we had somebody I could call if there was any trouble. They've always been there. If somebody was ugly, I'd make a phone call and there'd be that reassurance, nobody's going to bother you.
And I know your son, who, if I recall correctly, he's also named after you, was there at the first encounter, and he was terrified.
Yeah. And, I've heard of many guys from the government talk to him and say, you're one brave person. You're one of the few people that we've ever heard of that had a face-to-face encounter with these beings and not have your brain wiped or you remember the whole thing. It was happening in real time. And it took a lot of people coming. That was a big thing. From NASA folks to CIA, they come to help that child. When he was 17 years old and struggling and feared to he wouldn't lay down in the bed. He would jump up and run and get into bed with Mom and I. At 17, he was that afraid. It really impacted him.
If I recall the story correctly, he was there on that first occasion when you were fishing at the Cape Fear River. And during the time when you experienced 4 hours of missing time, he went out to look for you and ended up encountering these orbs and beings that seemed to emerge out of the orbs, and he hid from them in the bushes, but he was watching the whole time, and they immobilized him. But these beings, if I remember correctly, were like shadowy figures with big, bright red eyes.
Yep. And they look if you can imagine something translucent, a complete figure of a being that has the ability to turn their brightness up like a light bulb. They can glow very brightly or just barely, and you can see them. But when they first approached him, I'd been gone an hour or more, and he started looking for me. And finally, 2 hours into it, he never returned back to the fire. While the other guys were looking for me, there was 4 of us. So 1 sat at the fire and 2 took my truck. And Chris Jr. went on foot back in the forest. And they lost him. When I got back to the fire 4 hours later, I'm like, where's Chris Jr.? Because he wasn't there with the 3 of them. And they were not fishing anymore. They were just standing. They were lost for words because they'd lost me and my son. And he said, we don't know. He's been gone 2 hours. We've been looking for you and him. And so I just went right on by him. I didn't stay more than a minute to speak to him. And I went into the forest calling out for him. And what had happened is, without getting too long, he could see all the way down the road about a good quarter mile from where he was. He had a straight view down this road with trees straight up that grew over top of the road. It's like a tunnel you go through. And he saw these 2 orbs that far away, 2 red balls of light, cross the road into the riverside. Then they came back out in the road and started towards him, just seemed to be floating above the ground side by side. And when they got within 15, 20 feet of him, they were not orbs. They were 2 little tiny figures, about 3.5 feet tall. And their eyes, he described them as like they could close like shutters. One would be open and one would close. They could do either one, just like so. And when they'd look at him, he couldn't scream, he couldn't yell, he couldn't move. And that traumatized him worse than anything, having no power at all. Man, if you'd hear him talk, that was what really got him. So, and that's happened before.
Before that occasion, you mean?
No, after. I mean, after that occasion, it's happened again.
Where he was paralyzed.
Yes, sir. He'd be asleep in the bed, and he'd wake up and run. One night, he felt like he finally escaped whatever had him, and he ran in there with his mom and I, terrified, screaming that he'd heard this noise, this humming noise, and when he woke up, they were all around him, and he couldn't move. And he finally got away, and but that happened several times. That's why he would run away from home. He was scared to stay in that room. He was scared to sleep there. He thought if he could leave, it wouldn't follow him. Well, it did. Everywhere he went, it was behind him.
I guess it was your prayers. You were feeling so frustrated, and your family was feeling terrified by this and ostracized. And it was your prayers, I gather, that brought the lady to manifest to you and explain to you that this could be looked at as a gift, and it was up to you to use the gift.
That's exactly right. I was ready to give up, and she came and she said, "You know why I'm here. This is your burden you must bear." That's how she said it. And I felt ashamed because I just that night said, I quit. I'll never talk about it again. And when she came, she said, if you will tell what you know. She didn't tell me what to say. She just said, tell what you know. And that's not a whole lot, right? Other than here it is, it's appearing. You know, you want to see it, come here and we'll show it to you. But what it is, there's a lot to learn yet. But she said, if you'll do this, I'll be with you, I'll guide you, and I'll help you all along the way. And immediately I began to take pictures. For 5 years, I couldn't. And I have, 2,000 videos I've taken in the last 2 years. And many, many more. Many with the cell phone, many thousands of photos of orbs with people in them, dogs in them, other animals inside these balls of light.
Has she given you any indications of why the communication has opened up so much now? Or also, has she talked about the future at all?
Well, this is amazing because in 2019, from 2012 until 2019, you'll not find much on me as far as talking publicly. I was dealing with rheumatoid arthritis, having to move, very sick. And so there was not the whole time. That was the latter part towards 2019. So I walk out of my little cabin on Easter Monday of 2019, and this orb comes out of the sky, and it hovers over my pond 25 feet away for a half an hour. And I filmed it for 18 minutes. But after it left, I stood up and I felt so exhausted and drained, I just collapsed on my bed. And you would have thought that I would have wanted to tell the world, but it had this draining effect on me. So I went to bed, but the next morning I got up, it was like, oh my God, you got to tell the world what just happened. So I immediately started doing podcasts, and I did 10 in that year. But what this being told me, he said, trouble is happening. Tell everyone to store up. And just lock their doors for a little while because there's trouble coming. Well, that had to have been COVID. In 2020, I'm telling us in 2019, but it said, we're going to start appearing around the world more often, and because we want the world to know that we're here. And we're going to help you with witness and with camera and record us to share with the public. And immediately it started in high gear. From that point until now, this just incredible, the amount of interaction that's been happening since then and growing every day.
Do you have a name for these beings, or do you just refer to them as orbs?
Well, I think to me, they're some sort of an angelic being, celestial being, but what does that mean? What does it mean? I don't want to use it in a 2,000-year-old Bible verse, but I really think they were talking about the same thing that we're seeing here today. But what is that? I don't know. But it is spiritual. It does have a lot of power, more inconceivable power. And the knowledge of our thoughts, knows what you're going to say before you say it. I don't know. I just hope we can figure it out while I'm still alive. But I think it's going to introduce itself in a bigger way.
I know you've had some interactions with Diane Pasulka, who is a scholar of religion and who says that your experiences are actually quite consistent with ancient descriptions of angelic beings.
Yeah, in fact, if you read Daniel 10, where he talks about his encounter with an angel, I described it the same way. His body looked like glass on the outside. It had red glowing eyes. Daniel says the same thing. His body gleamed like topaz, so shiny and brilliant, and its eyes were like fire, red fire. So is it the same thing? I suspect it is the same thing. But then again, what is that?
It does certainly suggest that the doorway between our dimension and their dimension is opening up.
Yes, it definitely is. And some of the videos I sent you this week, I've taken 40 like that in the last 2 weeks, 40. And you could see me turn the camera in one direction and say, can I film you? And immediately it flashes and flies right out over my head and stuff. So it's definitely communicating in a 100-fold greater than it was 2 years ago.
It's increasing, and yet it does seem to be centered around you personally. It's not as if it's spreading all over North Carolina.
And it doesn't matter where I go. If I'm in Las Vegas or California, it shows up the same way. And another amazing thing that I write about in the book is I've had great success at asking it to appear in live time in other locations, and it do it within a split second. Over Washington, D.C., I have a friend there with a camera, and he's waiting, and suddenly it appears right over him. I've had that happen in Spain, Charlotte, North Carolina, Texas, Houston, people on the ground with photo equipment, and suddenly it appears over me and over them at the same time.
Well, that's very interesting, and I think it's wonderful that you're combining a very deep religious sensibility about this and at the same time a willingness to work with scientists.
Yes, I think this is the greatest thing ever. We need to figure it out. I'm just in the middle, right? It likes me for some reason, and I think the world needs to look into it while we have the chance to do it. It might lead me tomorrow, but I don't think so. I think it's going to get greater.
Well, Chris Bledsoe, it's been an honor to be with you. I'm very interested in following your work, and I hope we have an opportunity to continue the conversation.
You have always got that. Anytime you want me, I'm here for you. And I hope we can get together sometime and maybe experience this phenomenon together. That would be really amazing.
I'm sure I would enjoy that very much, Chris. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. I've been a fan of yours for years, and it's just like the greatest honor to be here. So I just thank you.
Well, it's an honor for me to be able to introduce you to the New Thinking Aloud audience. And for those of you listening or watching, thank you for being with us.